You've got to look at every element of your marketing, down to what does the invoice say if you're sending people an invoice. Make sure it's saying what you want it to. If it's a discounted offer, tell them it's a discounted offer. Don't just have a fee on there. Any opportunity you've got to reinforce your message, do it. Lucas, you're in a world of wearing, blue tinted sunglasses. James is in a world of going for a haircut now that makes him look a bit like Bobby Charlton. Are you combing it over?
We've gone for a similar look today, James. The hair.
We have, yeah. You obviously got the email.
Yeah, I did.
I'm actually thinking about having a haircut next week, like a proper one. Where you go to a place and there's a guy that's paid money to do it for you.
What? There's somewhere that you go and they cut in a shop.
Yeah.
I had my first yesterday, and it was a surreal experience.
Welcome to another edition of Bang for Your Business with me, James Burnett, and Lucas Hamby. Hi, Lucas.
Hello, James. You all right?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Today we're talking to serial entrepreneur Jeff Dandridge. Hi, Jeff.
Hello there. You okay?
Yeah, good. Thank you. You've been a founder of many businesses. Can you give us some highlights?
Okay, so I've been quite fortunate really, because I've worked in lots of different sectors with different types of business models. And really my personal journey started in about 99, where I set up a business called ValueWorks that kind of, the short story is we morphed into being an e-procurement platform, but we did it in quite an innovative way at the time, where we kind of adopted this transaction fee model, stroke software as a service, which at the time was kind of emerging as a business model type and was quite novel. But we focused very much on a niche where we were operating in the construction sector, and we built that out quite quickly to be a national player that we then exited to a private equity firm in 2012. And right on the back of that, I then did another business which was successful as well, that we kind of spun out of ValueWorks, called Shop for Support, which was another business-to-business play, specializing in a niche, but it had a consumer element where we were enabling the recipients of social care monies from the council to basically spend them in their own way. And we provided the system that they could do all of that, and that they could trade with service providers. And we kept that going for a couple of years. And that was a very lucky business, because we were just in the right place at the right time. And a big American consultancy firm came in and bought it for many, many times revenues, much more than it was actually worth. But it was just pure luck, because it happened to hit the sector at the time. And then I guess, I've probably built 8 or 9 businesses over the time, and not everything's worked, which if I get a chance later on, I'll tell you about some of the failures too. But another business I did, which was entirely different, was I built a lettings business that we went round and bought other lettings companies, because there was a bit of a valuation issue in the market when we were able to buy smaller lettings businesses for less than they were worth if we were as part of a bigger group. Then we created this big group and sold that to a national chain within 18 months. So that was quite a quick turnaround. And then I've kind of focused on that e-commerce-y type world of business and so on. And those are the highlights. But, my big lesson out of all of this is, as I said, there's 2 things really. One is it's a numbers game, and you've got to be in it to find the winners. And if you just only ever set up one business, then there's probably an 80% chance you will fail, or 90%. I think those are the kind of stats. Whereas if you set up lots, you have a much greater chance. And the best stuff I've done in terms of the most lucrative financially haven't necessarily been the best businesses. A lot of it is down to luck and being in the right sector at the right time. Some of the best stuff I've done has failed. And that's just that, that's just the way it is really. Well, you've got to keep trying businesses.
And was there always a plan with the businesses to have an exit, or were, you mentioned luck. Was sometimes it just people came along and it wasn't necessarily the right time for you, but it was the right time for them, and the numbers worked?
No, I've always kind of had an exits in mind. I've always built things in a way that could have that outcome, albeit the outcome of selling it and making some money is never the objective. But I just tend to structure things in a way that if the opportunity is there, then the business is set up to optimize whatever value could be achieved.
It's really interesting, actually. I read a book recently called Short Up My Startup, and it talks exactly that, about going into a business knowing whether you want an exit or not. What just on that point then, what advice would you have for someone that's looking to start a business, what they should potentially do differently if they are looking to one day sell it?
I think you want to structure things in a way which ultimately, I've always built businesses that are bootstrapped, and so I've never got venture capital. I've always either built it from what little money I've had, or just literally from the organic cash that we can generate, and that creates a real discipline around making the businesses profitable. And if you build businesses which are consistently profitable, then you might have an outcome. That's not the only way of doing it. You might be dead lucky and find something where people will pay a fortune for it just because you've got traction on the internet and you've not made any money yet. But I think those kind of opportunities are few and far between. So I've always built them in kind of a traditional way where the businesses wash their face and I make sure they're profitable. But it also, right from the early stages of the business, I engineer them financially to make sure that the margins are there. And I'm kind of forensic in that analysis. And until we've got that model right, I don't scale it.
No, that's really interesting. I mean, you're clearly, being the serial entrepreneur you are, very kind of driven and motivated person. I mean, what would you say does kind of motivate you then?
I enjoy early stage stuff, startups. I get a real buzz from helping kind of structure something that could grow quickly. I'm not the type of founder that can run the things when they've been going for years. I don't enjoy that. I have been in that place, but I like the early stage stuff and, solving the problems and finding a way of creating, almost a formula around how it can grow. And this is where digital marketing has changed the game really for me. And I'm a newcomer to digital marketing, but I see it as the mechanism by which you can predictably grow businesses if you get all the dials kind of going in the right direction.
You're a co-founder at UK Medispa. Can you tell us what the business does and how it's set up?
Well, this was one of those opportunities again, and so many of the things I've been involved in are just, chance. And basically, a friend of mine who incidentally cut my hair for 25 years, which is why my hair's probably in better condition than yours, James, at the moment. He built some hair salons, and we jointly saw an opportunity to build some aesthetic kind of beauty clinics that provide higher end services, so the stuff which, the treatments are expensive, things like laser hair removal, where, a high end clinic may charge, a full body package for £2,500, £3,000. But we saw a way to be disruptive in that space where we could be, if you like, the EasyJet of beauty clinics, where we could provide these very expensive treatments at, say, a 70 or 80% discount to the market and actually widen the market, because, a £3,000 cost is prohibitive for most people. But when you're talking about maybe, an entry level cost of 50 quid, lots of people can afford that. And we bring lots of people into these kind of treatments who would never have considered them. And so we came up with this disruptive model where we had this low cost operating model where we don't lease space and clinics on the high street. We use and work with higher end salons, and we rent space in their salons, so Tony and Guy and people like that, and we'll then take a room in there and we'll buy one of these expensive machines and put a couple of members of staff in, and there's only ever one staff on premises, so there's not a lot of management, and we can run it very, very cost effectively and discount the prices massively. And we set it up about 15 months ago now, and we've gone from literally we set it up with a couple of clinics, and we're now at 7, which is the fastest growth I've ever seen in anything I've been involved in, and that's what excites me about it.
Wow, that's amazing. And obviously acquisition is something like this very important, but then almost more so retention with a model such as this. How does your digital marketing strategy reflect that, and what's it kind of doing to kind of help the retention and the acquisition?
Well, if I start off with the acquisition, so the model around what we've done here is we've just got very granular with it immediately, where in a clinic we assign a budget per channel per day. So we started off, we cracked Facebook quite early on, and that still pulls in about 60% of all our clients. But we would spend, say, I don't know, £10 a day, for example, in a clinic in a geography. And because the geography is so tight, you get quite a bang for your buck for £10 a day. And then we would make a great offer. And what's been really interesting for me is that traditional digital marketing kind of strategy around, you build your brand and you get followers, you post interesting content, and they will ultimately come. We've turned it on its head a little bit. Not that we don't want to do that and build a brand in the longer term, but we've just gone to market with a very great offer and said, right, 70 quid, come into the clinic and get 6 treatments on a body area. And that's all you need to spend, and customers will buy that. We can go into open a new territory with no followers and instantly start getting bookings for the clinic with the offers that we have. So that's been really interesting. So we pull people through the door with great offers, and then upsell them additional services and treatments, and just provide a great service. We buy the best machines, and these machines are very expensive, and we have well-trained therapists, and then the clients stay. The kind of churn on clients is quite low, really. I'd say I've not got the exact stats, but I'm saying we're well ahead of what would normally kind of happen. And a lifetime value of a client might be £300 or £400 on average, I guess. And it probably costs us 25-30 quid to acquire a customer. So the numbers really, really work.
It's really interesting about turning, like you said, turning that kind of strategy on its head. But obviously, if you're offering a solution to something, then that's all people need. I mean, just on that note, in terms of the Facebook ads, is there anything in terms of kind of the ad type or the targeting, any insights there that's worked really well for you?
Well, Facebook works really well for us because you can be so prescriptive around the demographic, females 25 to 44, which is what we've targeted and really focused on. And then just make that offer within a 10-mile radius of the clinic. And that tends to work. And we constantly change the offers, and we're always thinking of new ideas and new services that we can add in as well. And so it does just tend to work. But we obviously didn't want to become a one-trick pony and have all our eggs in the Facebook basket, if you like. So we've had a plan to bring on other channels as well, which is working quite well now, where we've kind of making good progress with Google AdWords in a few geographies that we've started trialing it with. And we've also started to build a national brand using Instagram. So rather than have this local, so we've got this umbrella brand, UK Medispa, which provides the overarching infrastructure and, if you like, the messaging around everything. But we very much concentrate on the local business and the local territory, where that has a sub-brand. So UK Medispa is the brand, and the sub-brand might be Hale Medispa. And then for Hale Medispa, we're advertising specifically for them on Facebook, on Google Ads. But with Instagram, we've started building that national brand and saying we've got these different clinics, now come here. And the numbers are they're nowhere near as good as Facebook. We're kind of 6 or 7 times spend in terms of the revenues we generate. So if we spend a tenner, we'll generate 70 quid with Facebook. With Instagram and Google AdWords, we're down at 30 to 40 pounds. So it's still good. I always have a hurdle when I get over of 3xing the spend which we managed to do. But then what we do as well is we capture everyone in our database, and we then start to text market to them. And that's the most lucrative thing we can do as well. You know, for pennies, you market into a client, and that is off the scale in terms of the returns you get without having a big database. You know, we've only got 3,000 or 4,000 clients in our database. So anyone that's ever made contact, and we're regularly texting as well. And that now drives 20% of all our customer acquisition and revenue.
Wow. And also you mentioned before we came on that texting is a really good device to maximize or minimize no-shows.
Yeah, it is. And I think we get very forensic with the process. So when we've looked at, you know, going back to this kind of airline low-cost operating model, which, think about what the airlines did. They basically stripped back all the processes, and, you know, the ultimate was Ryanair considering charging people to go to the toilet. But it is a little bit like that. So we've looked at all of the processes. So, for example, no-show rates in the beauty hair sector average 15 to 17%. We've got them down to less than 5% now. Through really experimenting with different methods of communicating with customers to make sure they turn up. Basically, you know, people would turn up and not know where we are, so we now send everyone a little map, you know, and stuff like that really works. And so, yeah, I think you need to get that granularity with a lot of this stuff, you know. So we've worked hard at another thing is getting people to pay, because people will come onto Facebook, say, oh, I love this, yeah. So we bang them a payment link using Square. And then if they've not paid within 24 hours, they're not going to pay, you know. So we're all over it for 24 hours to make sure that they convert, and we'll send them a reminder at a certain time of day in the evening when hopefully they're sat down having a glass of wine, and we'll convert those ones that haven't converted immediately. And we've just been all over the processes like that.
I think that's it. Retargeting on social, and it's interesting through the text message word, but retargeting people that have, say, shown interest, clicked the ad, but not actually converted, making sure you're going back to them and retargeting these warm audiences is so important. And that's, yeah, it's hugely effective.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, you've got to look at every element of your marketing, you know, down to what does the invoice say if you're sending people an invoice. You know, make sure it's saying what you want it to. If it's a discounted offer, tell them it's a discounted offer. Don't just have a fee on there. You know, any opportunity you've got to reinforce your message, do it whenever you can.
And how did the pandemic affect the business, and how have you managed to bounce back from that?
So the pandemic was initially disastrous. You know, it was, you know, going back to my earlier comment that I've always bootstrapped businesses. So that means they're undercapitalized, you know, and this business was no different. We were running an overdraft to give us some working capital, and that was, it's approaching its limit. You know, we're 25 grand overdraft. And we didn't have any other capital, but we were growing quickly. So we knew that the organic cash flows would come. But then when it, you know, everywhere shut in the space of a couple of days, your money stopped. It was literally, how are we going to survive? And we did think we might have to liquidate the business and start again. But then the measures were introduced, so we were able to furlough the therapists. So we got 10 staff on furlough, which was hugely helpful. And we then saw an opportunity to get a bounce back loan. So we were actually in a place where I said I'd never gone for venture capital. I was considering it because I could see such an opportunity to build this business quickly prior to the pandemic that I thought, you know, if we got a good injection of venture capital, we could go much quicker than we could out of organic cash. So I'd started that path. But when the pandemic came, I've been able to defer a VAT payment, furlough some staff, and get a bounce back loan. And I've got enough capital now to grow without any venture capital. But the big thing we did was, after a week, we switched back on our digital marketing. And we pulled in 60,000 of revenues where we were getting people to make payments for future bookings, even though we couldn't give them a date. We said, look, this is a great offer, pay half now and half when you come in, and we'll get you booked in. Then we go back and say, you know, we need to change the date because it's not confirmed the opening. And we were able to get through and ultimately come out of the pandemic in better shape than I could have ever hoped. And it was, you know, I'd like to say it was some clever strategy. It wasn't. It was just purely the cards fell in our favor. And we got a little dose of luck, and now we're flying again.
It's interesting.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned luck a couple of times, haven't you? You need luck, but you also need to be able to take that opportunity when that opportunity arises. So
it's creating your own luck as well, I think.
Yeah.
I believe that so much.
Well, we had no money, and what little money we had, we decided to spend on digital marketing. So I guess that's making your own luck, isn't it? Because we could have just stopped spending anything.
I think that's what, for me, was quite frustrating with some of my clients. I mean, frustrating for me just because I knew how effective during lockdown keeping marketing was, say, on social media, but obviously at the same time, completely understand why companies had to cut that off. But you know, we've spoken a lot about how there's hundreds of years of evidence, well, not hundreds, obviously, but a lot of evidence to show how important it is during situations like this to continue marketing your business, being front of mind for when the doors do open again. How do you plan to scale the business, and what advice do you have for other entrepreneurs out there looking to scale theirs?
So scale is, you know, what is scalability? You need a model that can scale, and you know, when you can drop on a model that has features that are scalable, that is probably the biggest nut you can crack. It's hard to scale different types of things, and I've never found anything as scalable as this because of the repeatable nature of it. You know, once you've got your formula right, i.e. you open a clinic, you do some marketing, customers come in, you deliver a service, you get your money. You know, that's it. Then to open another clinic and another clinic and another clinic, it's straightforward. So the scalability of this is purely dependent on capital. You know, can we finance expansion? So because we're renting rooms in other salons, well, that's much easier for us because we've not got a big fit out cost of a new clinic, which might be over 100,000. We then acquire machines, and we've been able to do that very cleverly because we've got we work directly with the manufacturers of the machines, and then it's about then just, you know, creating enough cash to open a clinic, and we were able to quite easily do it within the cash flows, where the constraint isn't capital now for us, it's actually bandwidth in how quickly can we, you know, just the activity and opening a new one when you've got to recruit some staff and negotiate a lease with somebody, and you know, that takes the time. So the challenge for me now is thinking about, you know, what people do we need in the future to give us that growth. I can see that we can get to 10 quickly with what we've got, but then we probably need an ops manager to pick up the existing clinics we have whilst one of the business partner picks up opening the new clinics. So that's what we'll probably do, but it's so dependent on the type of business and the stage it's at.
That's exciting. What would you say? You mentioned it earlier, so I'm going to ask this question. What would you say is the one thing that hasn't gone to plan in your career, and how did you overcome it?
So, you know, the things that haven't gone to plan is I'm painting a very rosy picture of you know, setting up businesses and you know, all this stuff works. It doesn't. You know, of the 8 or 9 that I've had, 3 or 4 have failed. You know, and failure is subjective, really. What constitutes failure? Because I've been kind of quite fortunate to think about business in a way that how I can limit the damage as well. If it doesn't work, how much am I wasting, and so on. So there are lots of nice tax schemes out there, such as the Enterprise Investment Scheme and the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, which allow you to invest in businesses in a way that limits the capital because of the tax benefits you get. So if you, for example, invested 100,000 as a round number in a business, then with the tax incentives, actually, if it goes wrong, you're probably risking 25,000. So 25 grand to have a punt at something that might do really well, you know, that's the kind of that's the world I'm in. I'm not investing 10 million in things. I'm investing at that kind of level. And stuff has gone wrong. So I set up a business called Keep Local that was probably, as I said, one of the best things I've done, because the model was great, and it was about how you gave the high street and local businesses and shops the ability to have a mobile presence and online sales in a way that kind of the bigger companies did without, and they've not got the expertise. So we've created this kind of ecosystem called Keep Local, which was about promoting the local high street, where individual outlets could have their own store on there and their own account. But for a consumer, they could have one single account that was portable across all the different businesses. And it was brilliant. And it was difficult to make work, but we overcame all the problems. But that was a business that did require a lot of cash to get to the next stage. And we went down the venture capital route with that. And we got some offers for, this was multi-million-pound offers. And we basically got into bed with a VC partner, and cut a long story short, the offer wasn't what we thought it was. And we ran out of runway and energy a little bit with it. And so that was a tough one, because we'd actually solved the problems and that business was scalable, but for other factors, we couldn't carry on. Another business, interestingly, I set up was a business called Manchester Water Taxis, where a friend had this idea of creating this brand called Waxies, and around Media City in Manchester, and around all the canals, and we brought these yellow boats from China that were like water taxis, are the same you'd see in kind of Hong Kong harbour and stuff. And everybody loved it, we're on the telly and everything. It was amazing, on breakfast TV and Northwest Tonight, and it was mad. We actually, it was funny though, because I got involved in this business literally at the 11th hour, and this is talking about having a gamble with things. As I said, it was a friend. I'd known him for ages, and he'd talked for years about this business. And he said, right, I put every penny I've got into buying these boats, but I need another 25,000 just to finish them. Because I can't afford to pay any more money to the boatyard in Liverpool. But we're taking Father Christmas next week from Manchester to the Trafford Centre, and it's on Northwest Tonight, but I've no boat. So I literally went to the boatyard, wrote a cheque. I didn't even have any shares in the business or anything, and bailed him out. And we got the boat, and then I sorted out the shares and everything. And that was one of those businesses. It was such a great business, and it was a great journey. But I mean, ultimately, it didn't work because we couldn't get enough punters to pay for that form of travel. But as I said, you've got to have a go with these things. But not everything works. But you can limit the damage if you're smart about it.
I mean, it just shows how many businesses you've started and how many kind of different, how many projects there have been, whether it be success or failure. It's amazing. I mean, how just on that point, how, when you're all in with a business, how do you find the time to think of ideas for new businesses? What does that process look like?
I'm not somebody that comes up with the ideas, I don't think. What I'm good at spotting things there that are good ideas and that could grow, and that people don't perhaps have the experience to build out. And that's what I'm kind of quite good at spotting, I think. Which is why I always tend to have partners in businesses rather than, being the lone genius like someone like Elon Musk that will create these, incredible businesses all on his own. I'm not that person, definitely not. But it's about, I am always talking to people and listening to them. And, I'm lucky now because I'm in a place where people come to me with ideas as well. And in my little local world, I'm not in some kind of great cluster of startup businesses in Silicon Roundabout, whatever it is. I'm just stuck up in Wigan doing my stuff, but I do still get enough people talking to me that I find things.
It's interesting that that you talked about the kind of the person that comes up with an idea. I think quite often gets huge amounts of credit and celebration. Oh, you came out with the idea, but actually the ability to identify whether an idea has got legs and is commercial, I actually, when you think about it, is much more valuable than coming up with the idea itself.
I think that's it's that, and then it's, sorry to interrupt, it's that, and then what you said, when to stop as well. Some people run it too far into the ground where they lose even more money, but the exact point to stop it and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it is. And it's not quite as clean as that, but you're right. It's about saying, well, recognizing when you're probably not going to get to the place you need to. And so with the water taxi business, using that as a case study, I could see we could probably make that work if you kept it going for 3 or 5 years and you were prepared to make very little out of it for that time scale. But, you know, we didn't want to do that. And so we took the decision to sell the boats because the boats had a value and that would basically pay most people the money back. So we all got out of it, you know, and that water taxi business, you know, as I said, I was writing checks and things, but actually I think I lost £8,000. So it wasn't very much at all. But you know, there's a cost to time as well. And when you're all in with something, and I tend to be involved in businesses at 2 levels. One is where I'm just kind of, you know, working with a founder and helping a little bit, or as in the case of the beauty clinics, I'm literally doing hours every day on that business at a much more executive level. So it really depends, but that time does have a cost. And, you know, my biggest failure was keep local. And I worked on that for approaching 2 years really, and I never took a penny and put quite a bit of cash in. So that was a painful experience.
You talked about 2 different levels. You're a business growth mentor with Startup Accelerator Nova. Can you tell us about how the organisation works? Who set it up, and how many businesses they're working with?
Yeah, so I had an aspiration that I wanted to work in the kind of venture capital space, and I felt that I had experiences that could help people, but I didn't particularly want to be travelling up and down to London all the time. And I felt very limited into what there was in the Northwest. But I stumbled across this entity, Nova, through a mutual friend. And Nova is really interesting because they've kind of adopted this lean startup model, which has been pioneered in Silicon Valley by entities such as Y Combinator, where you go through a kind of a very structured business development process and a funding process that goes in parallel with that, where there's various gateways such as, you know, you're validating the product or service, you're then in a growth phase, and it's all very formulaic. And they followed that model as an accelerator, and they were set up by Sir Terry Lee, who's the ex-Tesco CEO and one of the professors out of Liverpool University, and they've created lots and lots of different types of businesses. You know, they're all tech businesses, so there's lots of e-commerce plays. They've also done a lot in the medical kind of space with, you know, personal health solutions and things, you know, whether it's little devices that people wear. So there's hardware businesses, which I tend not to be involved in. I've been rooted down helping e-commerce type businesses, right, where I'll typically do a day a month with them, you know, which literally on a weekly basis, I'll be having calls with the founders, but in a really hands-on way. And I love it. You know, we're solving the problems and working through the commercialization of it, because interestingly, what Nova spotted, which is a point you've just made, Lucas, is that the commercialization of businesses, sorry, actually it was you, James, the commercialization of businesses is often something that's overlooked, in that people have ideas and will really focus on the product or service offering, but not give enough attention to the commercialization. And so within that lean startup model of product validation, they'll validate, yes, people like our product, and we've piloted in this many locations and worked with these user groups, and it will now go and get a load of venture capital and build it out. It isn't that simple. You have to validate your growth strategy as well, and the commercial strategy. And that's what I tend to help them with, because they recognize they had a gap in skills in that area.
Sounds really
interesting. So how does your, obviously routine is extremely important, especially as an entrepreneur. How does your routine, what does your routine look like, and how does it affect your productivity?
So I need a routine, and I was personally, after I sold my first couple of businesses, I was lost a little bit really, because I didn't have the structure of a job, and I hadn't yet found the thing I wanted to do, which was, you know, now I'm in a really nice place where I have executive responsibilities in a business. So the clinics, where I have 2 or 3 hours a day to do on that. And then I do this mentor stuff with Nova that might take me an hour a day on average or whatever. And so I've got that work, but I have structure to my day that's provided by my executive role in the clinics, in that I get up in the morning and, you know, I'll look at the cash flow, I'll reconcile a bank account, and I'll reconcile yesterday's take-ins and look at what we brought in on the in the digital channel. So that gives me the structure and the routine. And you're absolutely right, Lucas. You need routine to be productive. And I found without having it, I got lost and found it difficult to really motivate myself and have that structure in my day.
And I think that's something we've spoken about with, you know, people in furlough and everything with lockdown. A lot of people lose that routine, and it's, you know, productivity, yes, but then also mental health, what it does for that. So yeah, it's difficult in that sense.
It's funny because a 9 to 5, you talked earlier about with it's different with the job with a 9 to 5 or a regular job. That structure or that routine, if you like, is it's almost imposed upon you, whereas when you've got the flexibility perhaps not to have that imposed upon you, I think we're all violently agreeing that you almost need to impose it yourself. You need to be saying, like, this is what I'm going to do, these are the times, and actually it feels like it's as important to make sure you know when you're working as when you're stopping as well. And I think I've spoken to you before on this. You know, I think you're an individual who likes to work really hard, and then actually is quite clear when you get to the end of the day. You get to a time when it's like, right, I'm finishing now. That's my day. I'm going to go on the squash court, for instance.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think interestingly that I don't believe, you know, everybody's talking now about this kind of quantum shift in how people will work, and that home working is going to become the dominant model. I'm not kind of quite subscribed to that yet, because I think, you know, we need as individuals to work with people. And yes, you can do a lot in kind of this way over Zoom, but I think ultimately people are social animals, and you need to add that into your day if you haven't got it. So for me, what that looks like is I would go to the gym in the morning, which is as much a social thing, you know. Yeah. I would go and do half an hour in the gym, and then go and have a coffee and have a chat with a few people that I see quite regularly, and then go back to my desk and work. And then I might, you know, do something in the evening, play squash or whatever. And without that, so for me, what happened in lockdown is all that stuff stopped, but I was just working at home. And, you know, I didn't find it easy because of that lack of social interaction. So, you know, I think there'll be a halfway house with all of this stuff, where actually people will be given more flexibility to work at home. But ultimately, I don't think the office is going away anytime soon.
No, and I think we've talked about loneliness before, and actually that sounds like a good sort of bunch of coping strategies in terms of making sure you still have, you know, the interaction with other human beings. You know, no one wants to get to the end of a day having really not seen anyone or spoken to anyone. That's not, as you say, as a human being, that's not the way we're geared, is it? It's not the way we're wired.
When we first started working together, James, and when, you know, going from a corporate role where you kind of have that commute into London, and that's almost a routine in itself, that journey in the morning, losing that completely. I think another element to a routine that's important, obviously, having a working routine, but it's that, like you just said, Jeff, about that morning routine of whether that include getting up and going to the gym, or having half an hour where you read, or catch up on the news or meditate. Having that kind of morning routine is really important as well. Jeff, thank you so much for the time. It's been truly valuable. I mean, I've learned a lot. Thank you so much for coming today. Guys, obviously, if you found that useful, please do subscribe. Our YouTube channel is Bang for Your Business. We're also on Spotify, Bang for Your Business. Jeff will put any links below for your stuff. But guys, thank you so much, and we will see you in the next one.